They left me at the airport with a plastic bag of pills, a tourist brochure, and no passport. At first, I thought it was a mistake, some miscommunication, a missed connection. I waited outside the arrivals area in Faro, Portugal, thinking they'd turn the car around. They'd gone to check something, to fetch coffee, to fix the hotel mix-up. But the sun moved across the sky, and still no one came back. It wasn't until I tried to call my daughter that I noticed my phone no longer worked. No signal, no credit, no roaming. Just the black screen staring back at me like it knew something I didn't. I asked a man in a blue shirt if he spoke English. He nodded and pointed toward a vending machine. I must have looked mad, standing there in orthopedic sandals and a cardigan, holding a useless phone and a little zippered wallet with 40 euros in coins. My name is Maeve Cartwright. I am 78 years old. I have lived in the same house in Reading for 51 of those years. I raised a daughter, lost a husband, and built a quiet, ordinary life. 2 weeks ago, my daughter Chloe and her husband Oliver said they were taking me on a holiday to rest my bones and feel the sun. I didn't argue. I liked the idea. It was kind of them. That's what I told myself. The hotel was real, I'll give them that. Chloe had made a reservation. I arrived to find my name on the list and a key card waiting. Room 2mu4, a small balcony, 2 twin beds, and an air conditioner that made more noise than it gave cool. There was a note on the nightstand. Went to get groceries. Back soon. I read it 3 times. That was 2 days ago. No one came back. I'd gone to the front desk and asked to call their mobile. The number rang, then stopped. I asked again the next morning, and again the next evening. Eventually, the receptionist said, with a strained smile, "There is no answer, madam." She stopped looking me in the eyes. I didn't cry. Maybe I should have. But something in me had gone cold. Or perhaps, not cold, clear. On the 3rd day, the hotel manager came to me. He looked uncomfortable, like he was about to fire someone. "Mrs. Cartwright," he said, "there is a situation. The room, it is no longer paid." I nodded, as if I had expected that. And I think I had. Somewhere deep down, I had known. They'd brought me here to get rid of me. That evening, I gathered my things, what little I had, and sat in the hotel lobby, pretending to read a paperback someone had left behind. I waited until the staff shift changed, then quietly walked out. No one stopped me. No one asked anything. I had 40 euros, a passport that was no longer in my purse, and a daughter who had, by all signs, decided I was no longer necessary in her life. At a public bench near the marina, I sat and watched the lights across the water. People walked by, laughing, holding hands, licking melting ice cream cones. A dog barked. A man sang badly to a woman who was half listening. No one noticed me. There was something oddly freeing in that. No one expected anything from me anymore. Not Chloe, not Oliver, not even the bank, because I just knew, they'd found a way to get into my accounts. I felt the emptiness where my bank card had been. I always kept it tucked behind my ID. Both were gone. And yet, I didn't panic. Not yet. I don't know if it was pride or shock or age, but I sat there for a long time, thinking, replaying things. Chloe had started hinting at downsizing last year, told me the house was too much for me, that the stairs were dangerous, that her friend's mother had moved to a lovely place with nurses and bingo and freedom. I told her I didn't need that I had my rose bushes and my books and my neighbors. I told her I was fine. She hadn't liked that. 3 months ago, she'd brought papers. Just some simplifications, Mum, so we can help you more easily. I remember her smile. It didn't reach her eyes. I didn't read the papers closely. I trusted her. God help me, I trusted her. Now I had nothing but this bench, these coins, and my breath, still in my lungs, still mine. I didn't sleep that night. I sat upright, my back aching, legs swollen, but I didn't dare close my eyes. At dawn, a woman with a broom passed by and gave me a tired smile. I nodded. She swept around my feet like I was a street lamp, something fixed, something expected. When she disappeared, I stood up slowly and made my way toward the main street. Somewhere in that sleepy town, someone would speak English. Someone would help me find the consulate. But first, I had to survive one more day. The second morning was worse than the first. Not because of hunger, though my stomach had begun to twist on itself, but because I now knew no one was coming. I spent most of the early hours walking slowly along the edge of the marina, trying not to look too much like what I was, a nearly 80-year-old woman with no home, no ID, and no idea what day it was. My legs burned. My hip was threatening mutiny. But I kept going. There was a tourist office near the corner with bright blue signage. It opened at 10. I waited nearby, counting the coins in my palm. 43 euros and a few cents. That was all I had. Chloe had taken the rest, or at least removed any access to it. She'd always been efficient like that. She managed the bank apps on my phone, said it was easier for me. So you don't have to remember all those passwords. Of course. How convenient. At 10 on the dot, I stepped inside the tourist office and found a young man behind the desk, typing. He looked up with a smile that faded slightly when he saw me. "Can I help you, Senora?" I took a breath. "I need the British consulate, or embassy, or someone who can help. I've been stranded here." His eyebrows rose. "Stranded?" "I have no passport," I said. "No money, no phone. My daughter left me here. I need help." He blinked. "Your daughter left you? On purpose?" I looked him in the eye. "Yes, I believe so." He stared for a moment, then nodded slowly. "Okay. One moment." He began clicking on his keyboard, scribbling a note. "There is no full consulate here, only a small office. British National Service in Faro City. I can give you the address." "Can you write it?" My hands were shaking slightly. He nodded and tore off a piece of paper. "Here, and there's a bus, number 14. Goes every hour." He hesitated. "Do you have fare?" I nodded. Barely. The ride to the city took 50 minutes. I sat near the back, gripping my bag. My shoes pinched. My throat was dry. My body ached in all the ways that make you wonder if you'll get up again. But I watched the scenery pass with narrowed eyes. I wasn't afraid. I was angry now. And anger, I'd learned, is a powerful kind of fuel. The consular office was tucked behind a pharmacy and a bakery. A tiny glass door with a sticker reading British National Support. Inside, the receptionist was a woman of about 40, kind but guarded. When I told her what happened, she didn't act surprised. "You're not the first, Mrs. Cartwright. Unfortunately." She pushed a small glass of water toward me. "I'm going to have to ask you a few questions, and we'll start verifying your identity." "I don't have any ID," I said. "My daughter took my passport, and my phone, and everything." "That's all right," she said gently. "We can use other ways. Do you remember your national insurance number?" I did. She asked about addresses, doctors, even my late husband's name. I answered everything, though my mouth was dry and my shoulders hunched from fatigue. At the end, She gave a soft nod. "You'll need to stay nearby while we work this through," she said. "We can arrange temporary accommodation through our welfare liaison. It's not a hotel, but it's clean and safe." "And the house?" I asked. She looked at me carefully. "What house?" "My house. In Reading. I think they've taken it." I signed some papers I didn't understand. My daughter, Chloe, she works in finance. Her husband, too. They know how to move money around. The woman paused. "That's more complicated, but you have rights. If fraud was committed, or coercion, we can refer this to the proper authorities." I nodded, but I could feel the crack forming inside. That night, I was driven to a plain concrete building with a green gate and a woman named Lucia who spoke broken English but had warm eyes and clean sheets. She gave me soup and pointed to a cot near the window. "You sleep now. Tomorrow, strong day." I didn't sleep. Not really. My mind was whirring. I kept hearing Chloe's voice. "You don't need all that space, Mum. What if something happens and we're not there? You trust me, don't you?" God help me, I did. But that was done. The next morning, I returned to the consular office. They had started verifying my identity with HM Passport Office and my old GP. They also confirmed something that made my stomach turn. "Your bank accounts," the officer said, "have been modified. All three are now linked to a third-party authorization, under the name Chloe Stratton." "She changed the access." "Yes, there are transfers as recent as last week. Large ones." I clenched my fists. "Can you block them?" "Not directly," she said. "But if you can authorize us, we'll liaise with your bank and request an emergency suspension. You'll need to sign some forms." I signed them, slowly but firmly. And just like that, a small piece of control returned. That evening, I was sitting by the window at the shelter when a woman named Raquel, a resident, came to me holding her phone. She was Portuguese, older than me, but spry. She tapped the screen. "English, yes?" I nodded. She handed me the phone. "Message. From your Fila, your daughter." I stared at the screen. It was a WhatsApp message. "Hi, Mum. We're so sorry for the confusion. Something happened with the tickets. We thought you were coming back later. Can you send us $2,000 for a lawyer and rent? We're in a bind right now. Please help." My fingers closed around the phone. Not a word about the passport, not a word about the money, just straight to the ask. My jaw tightened. I handed the phone back to Raquel. "Thank you," I said quietly. She looked at me. "Family?" I nodded once. Once. I stared at the wall for a long time that night. A lawyer and rent. That's what she'd written. As if it were nothing. As if I hadn't just been abandoned in another country, like an old suitcase left on a platform. I remembered the wording exactly. "We're in a bind right now. Please help." Not, "How are you?" Not, "Are you safe?" Not even an apology worth its syllables. Just, "Send money." And I suppose that was always the point. Raquel sat beside me on the bench outside the shelter, peeling a hard-boiled egg with expert fingers. "You not send?" she asked. "No," I said. She smiled faintly and nodded. "Good." I had 42 euros left and a small voucher from the shelter for lunch the next day. I had no bank cards, no income, no roof I could call my own. And my daughter, my only child, had written to me not to ask forgiveness, not to beg me to come home, but to ask for £2,000. That was the kind of love I'd raised. The next morning, I returned to the British office. The consular officer, her name was Priya, greeted me with a firmness I had come to trust. "Good news," she said. "Your identity has been confirmed. HMPO is issuing an emergency passport. It will take 48 hours. Once that's done, we can book you a seat on a flight home. There's a fund for vulnerable returnees, and you qualify." I nodded slowly, the relief not yet finding a place to settle. "And the accounts?" "We've contacted your bank," she said. "They flagged suspicious activity going back several months. A fraud prevention specialist is reviewing the access history now. We'll know more by tomorrow." I wanted to ask, "Will I get it all back?" But I didn't. I knew better than to ask for promises. Back at the shelter, Raquel had news for me. "Your daughter," she said, "sent again." She held out her phone like a thing that smelled bad. I read the message. It was longer this time. "Mom, I don't know what stories you're telling people, but you left your house to us. You said we could manage everything. We didn't abandon you. You chose to stay in Portugal longer. Please don't mess things up for everyone. If you want us to work things out, send the money and we'll talk." I felt something click into place inside me. This wasn't desperation. This was rehearsal. She'd already thought about what she'd say when people asked. She'd rehearsed it in her mirror, in Oliver's arms, over late-night wine and smug, clever smiles. She was rewriting the story. I walked outside and sat under the lemon tree that grew crooked beside the wall. I breathed in slowly and let the air fill every sore, bruised part of me. Then I pulled the little paper where I'd scribbled my account number, and I asked Raquel if I could borrow her phone once more. "Tell me the bank's UK number," she said. I called. It took 7 minutes to verify who I was, my voice shaking, but firm. They asked security questions, dates of transactions, the name of my first pet. I answered them all. They told me they saw suspicious logins from devices that were not mine. One from an iPad in Surrey, another from a laptop in a different name, accessed using parental permission settings. "She used my trust," I said flatly. "We'll lock the accounts immediately," the specialist said. "You'll receive confirmation by text and email once we've restored your access." "I don't have either at the moment," I said. "Can you send them to your branch in Reading? I'll collect them when I return." He hesitated. "Are you safe, ma'am?" I swallowed. "Yes, I'm safe, just not home yet." He paused again, then said quietly, "I'm sorry this happened." "Me too," I said. That night I didn't eat. Not because of hunger, but because something else had settled into my belly. A hard, quiet resolve. I stayed up making a list on a scrap of shelter paper. Contact solicitor. Property title. Check council records. Ownership transfers. Revoke any powers of attorney. Freeze all joint financial instruments. Draft new will. Contact Eloise, tell her everything. Eloise was my niece. She worked in conveyancing. By morning, I had memorized every item on the list. When Priya handed me the temporary passport later that day, I nearly cried. Not because it was paper, but because it meant I was no longer no one. I was someone again. A woman with a name. A woman with a record. A woman with a plan. Raquel saw me off at the bus stop. "You strong," she said, pressing something into my hand. It was a string bracelet, woven red and gold. "For the journey, and for what you do after." I tied it on my wrist. "I won't forget this," I said. "You won't have to," she replied. "You will remember, and they will too." There's a special kind of silence at Heathrow Terminal 3 when you land with nothing but a fabric tote, a Portuguese passport stamped in emergency red ink, and the knowledge that your family no longer expects you to exist. I stepped onto English soil with shoes that had thinned through walking and a back that felt 100 years old. But my hands were steady. My breath was even. I wasn't coming home in shame. I was coming for answers. The cab from the airport to Reading cost more than half my bank account, the only part I could access at the moment. But I didn't flinch. I gave the driver the address out loud just to hear myself say it. 14 Celandine Road. My home. Or what used to be. When we turned the corner, I spotted it instantly. The garden trimmed, the curtains drawn shut. New car in the driveway. Chloe's taste. Not Oliver's. He always went for the cheap lease. I'd paid for the last one, years ago, after he said he couldn't get to interviews without reliable wheels. I asked the driver to wait. I stood at the edge of the path for a long time. I didn't ring the bell. I didn't even walk to the door. I simply looked. At the bay window. At the hydrangeas I had planted with trembling fingers the summer after Gerald died. They were still there, but trimmed short, clipped into something that suited the new regime. I turned away. There was no use knocking on a door that had already been bolted from the inside. Instead, I walked. Slowly. Carefully. Toward the solicitor's office 3 streets down, the same one Gerald and I had used when we first bought the house, when we made our wills, when we made plans for a future that didn't include betrayal. Miss Statham was still there, older, with a different hairstyle, but sharp as ever. "Maeve Cartwright," she said, blinking twice. "I heard you were abroad." I smiled faintly. Apparently so did everyone. She led me into her office, and I told her everything, quietly, plainly, without theatrics. I didn't need to cry. She understood. That's the thing about good women. They can read your scars without you taking off the bandages. When I finished, she opened a drawer. "Your file was updated 3 months ago," she said, frowning. "Transfer of title. Signed and witnessed." "To whom?" I asked, though I already knew. "Chloe Stratton," she replied. "Sole ownership." "You signed a gift deed." I took a breath. "Did I?" "You did. It's filed and notarized. But," she tapped the paper, "it's thin. No independent legal advice noted. No verification of mental capacity. It's risky, especially if you contest it." "I'm contesting it," I said. "Then we begin there." She walked me through the process, challenging a transfer, claiming undue influence, freezing the asset through a caution notice. It would take weeks, maybe months, but it could be done. "I'll need a place to stay," I said. She nodded. "There's a women's accommodation trust in town, temporary but safe. We'll coordinate." By the time I left her office, the sun was down. I had no keys, no kitchen, no books to stack by the bed, but I had a folder, and for now, that was enough. The trust housing was tucked above an old charity shop, narrow hallways, shared bathrooms, kind-eyed women who didn't ask questions. The woman at reception handed me a pillow and a teacup. "You'll be fine here," she said. I believed her. The next morning, I walked to the bank, my bank, where Chloe had once insisted I give her joint access, just in case something happened. Something had, in fact, happened. The branch manager looked uncomfortable. "Yes, we've processed the suspension," he said, tapping on the screen. "The third-party mandates have been revoked, pending investigation. There's a fraud review open." "Do I have access to anything?" "Your pension account and 1 savings account. The rest is locked until the inquiry concludes." "How much is in the pension account?" £8,700. I nodded. It was enough. Enough to live. To fight. to not have to beg. Before I left, I had them print every transaction Chloe had made in the last 6 months, page after page. Payment for a landscaping company, home furnishings, 3,000 for a business retreat to Mallorca, all under my name. I folded the printout into my folder. Outside, I sat on a bench and watched traffic pass. Then I opened my little flip phone, a replacement provided by the consulate, and dialed the only number I still knew by heart. Eloise, my niece. She answered on the second ring. Maeve? Yes, love. A pause. Then softly. Are you back? I'm back. Oh, thank God. I didn't know what they'd done. I asked Chloe where you were, and she said you extended your holiday. But something felt wrong. Something was wrong. She exhaled. Where are you? Reading. I'm coming now. And for the first time in weeks, I felt something warm move inside me. Not hope, but proof. Proof that I wasn't invisible after all. Eloise arrived within the hour, breathless, in trainers and a coat she hadn't buttoned properly. She looked older than I remembered, but maybe that was the mirror in me. The mirror that had seen too many weeks of disbelief, too many truths that should have arrived years ago. She had Gerald's nose and my mother's impatience. She hugged me like I was a human being, not an obligation. I knew it, she whispered. I knew something was wrong. The way Chloe dodged my questions. The messages. She said you were extending your trip because you were finally relaxing. I pulled away, looked at her face. You knew they were up to something? I didn't want to believe it, she admitted. But Mom warned me. Said Chloe was always looking at the world like a ledger. What's owed, what's due, what's inconvenient. I didn't know her mother had said that, but I was grateful someone had seen the cracks before they split open. I need help, Eloise, I said plainly. Not pity, not comfort. I've had enough of both in doses that meant nothing. I need legal clarity, financial protection, and information. You've got it, she said without blinking. We went straight to her office, a small, square building near the canal where the wallpaper peeled at the corners, but the minds inside were sharp. She specialized in conveyancing, yes, but she also knew enough about probate and property fraud to understand exactly what was at stake. She read through the gift deed, then she read the account statements. Then she sat very still for a long time. They've been draining you slowly, she said, for almost a year, under the radar, quiet amounts at first, then bolder. And I let them. No, she said firmly, you trusted them. That's different. The next 2 hours were all action. She drafted a letter of claim to contest the property transfer. She contacted the land registry to lodge a caution notice. It would freeze any future dealings with the property until my challenge was resolved. You're still legally alive, she said, tapping the screen. Still legally competent, and that gives you power. She helped me set up a new bank account under a new email. No joint access. No online approvals without biometric ID. From now on, she said, everything goes through you. By the time I returned to the accommodation that evening, I felt something I hadn't felt since I'd first landed in Faro. Solidity. Not peace, no. That was too far away still. But something like ground beneath my feet again. The next morning, I opened my phone to see a new message. From Chloe. Mom, we heard you're back. Can we meet? There's been a massive misunderstanding. We want to clear the air. Please don't escalate things. Think of the family. I stared at it. Escalate? I'd been left without a passport in a foreign country. They'd drained my accounts, rewritten ownership of the house I lived in for half a century. And now, when I refused to disappear quietly, I was the one escalating. I didn't reply. Instead, I called Priya at the consulate and asked if they had finished processing the fraud documentation. She confirmed that the bank's investigation had begun. They'd frozen the larger accounts, and there were pending queries from law enforcement teams in London. "You might be contacted by an officer," she said. "Would you be willing to speak to them?" "Willing?" I smiled. "I've been waiting." I went to the charity shop downstairs and bought myself a clean blouse and a second-hand cardigan that reminded me of the one Gerald used to wear on Sundays. It smelled faintly of someone else's garden. That was fine. I had lived long enough in other people's shadows. A borrowed scent didn't scare me. Later that afternoon, a call came. Detective Inspector Linton. Financial Crimes Division. "Mrs. Cartwright," he said, "I'd like to meet in person. Go over a few things." I met him at a coffee shop 2 blocks from the Housing Trust. He was younger than I expected. Polite. Watchful. I handed him the folder Eloise had helped me organize. The statements, the deed, the letter Chloe had sent from Portugal asking for money. He flipped through the documents with growing focus. "We see this more and more," he said finally. "Financial abuse of the elderly, cloaked in family management. But you've done well to push back. Many don't." I didn't feel brave. I just felt done. Done with excuses. Done with silence. "They won't see it coming," he said, closing the folder. "Especially not if they're still trying to control the story." "They are," I said. "She wrote me this morning. Called it a misunderstanding." He raised an eyebrow. "Mind forwarding that message to me?" I did. I walked back slowly, pausing in front of the library where Gerald and I used to borrow gardening books and travel guides. The world felt familiar and foreign at once. Back in my room, I sat on the edge of the bed and unwrapped the biscuit the shelter had left beside the kettle. A bourbon cream, 2 layers pressed together with sweetness. It broke in my hand when I bit it. Not perfectly, but enough to taste something like home. I didn't go to the house. I didn't walk by. I didn't sit outside like some ghost waiting to be remembered. Instead, I let the paper trail do the walking. Miss Statham filed the formal objection to the property transfer. The land registry acknowledged receipt within 48 hours. The deed was officially under review. No sale, no refinancing, no remortgaging could happen until the matter was resolved. That was enough for now. Meanwhile, Eloise had dug deeper. "Do you remember signing anything called a lifetime occupancy waiver?" she asked one morning, over tea in her office. "No," I said. I remember Chloe using a lot of words I didn't understand, but I asked if I could stay in the house as long as I lived. She looked me in the eye and said, "Of course." Eloise's jaw tensed. She added a clause, said you relinquished the right to permanent residency, signed it on a Friday. It was filed by Monday. No cooling off period. No legal advice recorded. "So it's invalid?" "It's challengeable," she said, "especially with the context." Context. That was the polite word for abandonment, manipulation, and soft-spoken betrayal. The bank sent a letter confirming that all accounts had been placed under direct review. Chloe's access was fully revoked. No more logins from devices in Surrey. No more transactions labeled "for Mum" that were anything but. The charity trust where I stayed had given me a longer room term. They said it wasn't common, but that I'd clearly been through enough. I took it without shame. It had clean sheets, working heat, and silence I could shape with my own breath. And then, one gray morning, a letter came. Not an email, not a text. A real letter, on thick stationery, from Chloe. She had written it, or at least dictated it, with care. "Mum, I'm sorry things have escalated like this. None of this is what we intended. We were trying to manage things on your behalf. We know the house was technically yours, but we were always under the impression that you wanted us to have it eventually. We're happy to discuss options, including a buyback or some kind of shared arrangement. But please don't involve the police or lawyers. This can still be fixed quietly. Love, Chloe." No, "How are you?" No, "Are you safe?" Just a well-padded threat disguised as reconciliation. I folded the letter carefully and slid it into the growing folder. Later that afternoon, Detective Inspector Linton called again. "We've completed the preliminary investigation," he said. "There's enough to warrant a full fraud inquiry. We'll be interviewing your daughter and her husband, under caution." I closed my eyes. Not out of fear, out of fatigue. "They'll say I gave everything willingly." "They already have," he said. "But we have their messages, and the patterns. And now we have your word under affidavit. That counts." I hung up and sat very still. I wasn't trying to ruin Chloe's life. I was trying to get mine back. The next day, I met Eloise at a solicitor's office in Oxford, a specialist in elderly protection and property abuse. She'd worked on several high-profile cases, all with the same bitter outlines. A parent sidelined, isolated, handled by the next generation. She looked at me with no pity, just steadiness. "You're ahead of most," she said. "You've already recovered your identity, your accounts, your voice. What we're doing now is reinforcement." She drafted 2 documents that day, a new will and a revocation of all previous power of attorney grants, including the one Chloe had helped me set up 5 years ago. When I signed, my hand trembled. Not from age, but from the knowledge of what that signature meant. It meant I wasn't waiting for permission anymore. Outside the solicitor's office, Eloise stopped by a bakery and bought us 2 almond tarts. We sat on a bench and ate them with small forks, like we had all the time in the world. "Do you want to go see the house?" she asked finally. "No," I said. "It's just a building now." She looked at me sideways. "You still want it back?" "I want it not to be stolen," I said. "What I do with it after, I haven't decided." She nodded. A week passed. Then another. I didn't hear from Chloe again, but I got a letter from the land registry. The transfer was officially contested. The house could not be sold, mortgaged, or rented under her name. A legal hold was in place. Control, piece by piece, was returning. One day, in the library, I opened a blank notebook and wrote one sentence. "Just because you call it love doesn't mean it isn't theft." I underlined it twice. The first time I bought groceries again with my own bank card, I cried. Not in the shop. Not at the till. I waited until I got home, if you could call the room above a secondhand bookshop home, and I unpacked the bag slowly, one item at a time. Bread, tea, soap, a small pot of strawberry jam, the good kind. Things I used to buy without thinking. Things I hadn't touched in months because someone else had decided I didn't need to. I sat on the bed, held the card in my hand, and let myself feel it. Not the plastic, but the small, solid return of agency. I made toast. I brewed tea. I opened the window even though it was cold and let the air sting my face. For the first time in weeks, I felt human again. Not just some name on a file, or a problem to be solved, or a signature someone else had used. just Maeve, with warm bread and a locked front door. That afternoon, Eloise came by. "You've had mail," she said, handing me 2 envelopes. One from the bank, confirmation of the new accounts, the security protocols, the final rejection of Chloe's access requests. The other, heavier, from the police. I opened the second one first. Inside, a formal statement. The fraud case had officially been opened. Interviews were underway. Chloe and Oliver had both obtained solicitors. Neither had spoken much, but the evidence was clear enough to proceed. "They won't be charged yet," the letter said. "But they are under formal investigation." I sat very still after reading it. Then I folded the letter and put it with the rest. "I've been thinking," I told Eloise, "about the house." She looked at me over her mug. "What about it?" "I don't think I want to move back in." Her eyes didn't blink. "Okay." I planted everything there. Every rose, every bulb. I painted the skirting boards myself, but it feels ruined, like someone's taken the echo out of the walls. Eloise was quiet. Then she nodded. "So what do you want?" "I want to sell it. If it comes back to me, when it comes back, I want to choose where I live next. On my terms. No memories I didn't invite." "That's fair," she said. We spent the next hour going through options. Retirement flats near the park. Ground floor rentals near the canal. Nothing fancy. Nothing cold. Just places where no one else had rewritten the story without asking. Later that evening, I went through my keepsake box. A tin I'd kept hidden in the airing cupboard for decades. In it, letters from Gerald, an old ration card, a photo of me with my hair down, 23 years old, sitting in a deck chair in Devon. And a list I'd made on my 70th birthday. Things I'd wanted to do one day. Take a train to the coast, alone. Learn to use a proper camera. Eat in a restaurant without apologizing for being alone. See a ballet again. Write one story down, just one, before I forget the details. I smiled. Not sad, not wistful. Just honest. 7 years late, maybe, but I wasn't dead yet. The next day, Eloise drove me to the council office to register my new address. On the way back, we stopped outside the house. My house. Chloe's car wasn't there. Neither was Oliver's. A sign stood on the lawn. Under legal dispute. Entry subject to court consent. It was real now. The system had caught up. "You want to go in?" Eloise asked. "No," I said again. "That chapter's closed." She hesitated. "There's something I haven't told you." I turned to look at her. "I spoke to Toby," she said. "Chloe's son. My grandson, the one I hadn't seen since he was 16. He used to help me bring in the bins, used to eat biscuits at my kitchen table and ask questions about Gerald's medals. He asked me what was going on, said no one was telling him the truth. So I told him. I swallowed. He said he's sorry. Said he didn't know what they'd done, that they told him you'd got confused and didn't want to live there anymore. I didn't answer right away. "I gave him your number," she said. Still, I said nothing. That night, I turned the phone off. I wasn't ready. Forgiveness isn't something you owe just because the truth finally reached someone else's ears. It's something you offer when you decide it's time. And I wasn't there yet. The call came 2 days later. Not from Chloe, not from Oliver, from Toby. I almost didn't answer. The number was unfamiliar, and I'd grown wary of numbers I didn't recognize. But something, curiosity, or maybe that last stubborn thread of hope, made me press accept. "Grandma?" His voice hadn't changed as much as I expected. A little deeper, a little slower. but still recognizably the boy who used to run barefoot across my kitchen tiles, stealing biscuits and giggling with sugar in his teeth. "It's me. It's Toby." "I know," I said. There was a long pause. I could hear him breathing, could almost hear the way he shifted the phone from one hand to another, like he used to do when nervous. "I didn't know," he said finally. "I swear I didn't know what they did." "They said I'd moved to Portugal by choice, didn't they?" "Yes." "And that I gave them the house?" He hesitated. "They said it was all agreed, that you wanted them to take care of everything, that you didn't want the stress." I let silence answer. "I didn't believe it completely," he added. "But I didn't ask. I didn't want to get involved. I thought it was family stuff." "Between you and Mom, it was family stuff," I said quietly, "until they made it legal, and then criminal." "I'm sorry," he said again. "I know," I replied. We sat in that silence for a few seconds longer, then he said, "Can I see you?" "Not yet." "Okay," he said, voice soft. "Whenever you're ready." He hung up. I stared at the phone for a long time after. He hadn't asked for anything. Not money, not forgiveness, just space to say I didn't know. And I believed him. Not because I was naive, that part of me had been burned clean, but because there was something in his voice that hadn't yet learned how to lie. Later that day, Eloise called with an update. "They've made their move," she said. "Chloe and Oliver have submitted a counterclaim. They're saying you voluntarily signed the house over as a gift in gratitude. They're calling the contest regrettable and distressing for everyone involved." I nearly laughed. "That's rich," I said. "They're also trying to claim financial damages," she added. "They say the reversal is causing emotional and reputational harm." "Good." She paused. "Do you want to respond publicly?" "No," I said. "Let the paper carry the weight. I've said enough." In the weeks that followed, the case moved forward. Statements were collected. Witnesses consulted. The day I gave my formal affidavit, I dressed with care. I wore a slate blue blouse Gerald had always liked. I combed my hair back tight, and I wore the silver brooch my mother had left me, the one I used to pin to my coat on difficult days. The courtroom was small, just a chamber, really. No judge yet, no decision, just a recording officer and a solicitor asking questions. I told the truth, not with rage, not with tears, but with precision. They'd taken my passport, left me in another country, accessed my bank accounts without discussion, used my money to fund their comforts, rewrote the story of my life and called it care. When it was over, the solicitor looked at me and said, "You make a very compelling witness." I didn't answer. It wasn't a performance. It was just my life. That afternoon, I sat in the library with a pen and the same notebook from weeks ago. I added a line under my list. Take back the parts of yourself that no one bothered to ask for. That night, a letter came in through the door slot at the accommodation. No stamp, no envelope, just a folded sheet, handwritten. "Mum, I don't know what's left to say. You're not answering. You've gone too far with all of this. You've embarrassed us. I still don't understand why you're doing it, why you're punishing us this way. Was the house worth ruining our relationship? Was the money more important than your daughter? Chloe." I folded the note once, twice, 3 times. Then I dropped it into the bin. It wasn't worth saving. Some things aren't a misunderstanding. They're a decision. A week after Chloe's note, a brown envelope arrived, this time official. Postmarked, stamped, and heavy in the hand. The name on the sender's address, Stratton and Coher LLP. Their lawyer. I opened it slowly, aware of the weight not just in the paper, but in what it tried to do. Wear me down with language, with tone, with formality masquerading as fairness. Dear Mrs. Cartwright, we are writing on behalf of our clients, Chloe and Oliver Stratton, to express their ongoing distress and disappointment at the current legal and public narrative surrounding your family affairs. Our clients maintain that all actions taken, financial and property related, were executed with your full knowledge and consent. They further assert that your current accusations are not only factually inaccurate, but personally damaging. That said, in the interest of family peace and to avoid protracted litigation, our clients are prepared to make the following offer: a one-time financial settlement of $85,000 to be paid upon mutual withdrawal of all claims. Public acknowledgement, non-legal, that no intentional wrongdoing occurred. Agreement not to pursue any further criminal or civil action regarding prior financial transactions. This offer remains valid for 7 days. We urge you to consider resolution for the benefit of all involved. I read it 3 times, then I set it down. $85,000. Less than half the value of the house, a quarter of the total money they'd drained. But that wasn't the real insult. It was the phrase, for the benefit of all involved. As if silence was the only good a mother could offer. As if my dignity was negotiable. Eloise read the letter in silence. Then she looked up. They're bluffing, she said. They're scared of court, scared of exposure. This is desperation in a legal envelope. I know, I said. Do you want to respond? I nodded. But not in writing, not yet. The next morning, I walked into town. Not toward the courthouse, not toward the bank, to a small cafe tucked behind the station. One Chloe used to love when she was at university. They served espresso in tiny cups and charged too much for pastries. I ordered tea and sat by the window. And then, with quiet certainty, I called the number at the bottom of the letter. A man answered. Too smooth, too polite. Mrs. Cartwright, he said, I wasn't expecting your call. Are you calling to discuss the offer? I am, I said, and you can tell your clients that I won't be taking it. He paused. May I ask why? Because I'm not for sale. A beat of silence. I see, he said carefully. Then I assume you intend to pursue this through court. Yes, and you should prepare them for the fact that I won't be silenced. Not for money, not for shame, and certainly not for appearances. Mrs. Cartwright. I didn't wait. I ended the call. It wasn't anger. It wasn't even defiance. It was something quieter. The kind of certainty you earn, not declare. Later that day, Detective Inspector Linton left me a voicemail. His tone had changed. Measured, yes, but with new weight behind it. Mrs. Cartwright, I'm calling to let you know that formal charges are being considered. I can't guarantee prosecution, but the fraud case has enough foundation for referral to the Crown Prosecution Service. It wasn't over yet, but it was beginning to turn. That evening, I opened my notebook again. The one where I'd started recording more than just memories. I wrote, They don't expect you to fight. That's their first mistake. They expect you to give up halfway. That's their second. And they expect you to miss them more than you miss yourself. That's the third, and the one they'll regret most. I closed the book and looked out the window. It had started raining. Not hard, just the kind of rain that lingers and insists. The kind that soaks you slowly until you realize you've been cold for years. I made tea. I listened to the quiet. And for the first time in a long, long while, I didn't feel alone in it. I felt right in it. The solicitor called on a Thursday. Chloe's side has gone quiet, she said. No response to the counterclaim. No attempt to challenge the affidavit. They've either run out of confidence or out of money. Or both, I said. They're buying time, she added. But time's on your side now. The phrase stayed with me. Not just because it was true, but because I had forgotten what that felt like. Time being form, not something I was running behind, chasing, begging for, apologizing to. I didn't answer Chloe's last message. Not because I wanted to punish her, because I had nothing left to explain. I had explained enough in years spent softening the truth so she wouldn't feel guilty. Enough in signatures I'd given with trust she hadn't earned. Enough in silence. The most expensive kind of gift a mother gives when she still hopes to be loved back. And now? Now there was nothing left to protect except myself. Detective Inspector Linton called the same afternoon. "We've passed the file to CPS," he said. "They'll decide whether to pursue criminal charges." "What happens if they don't?" I asked. "Then the civil case stands on its own. And based on the evidence, your claim's very strong." I hung up, poured myself a glass of water, and opened the envelope from the land registry. Title temporarily frozen. Pending outcome of ownership dispute. Property status, under caution. A simple line. A world of weight lifted. I walked to the charity shop that day and bought a scarf. Navy, with a pale thread running through it. It wasn't expensive, but it looked like something I would have worn in the days when I still took pride in being visible. When I came back, I found a small parcel waiting. No return address. Inside, a notebook. Not new, worn at the corners, a page or two folded, and the name Toby scratched inside the front cover. There was no note, no explanation, just the notebook and the first page written in his hand. "I'm writing this because I think it's what you would have done. I want to tell it right. Not to fix things, just to finally say the truth. I saw what they did. I looked the other way. I let them talk like it was normal. But it wasn't. You didn't deserve any of it. If you don't want to speak to me, I understand. But I'm here. And I'm listening now." I closed the book, held it to my chest. It didn't change the facts. It didn't undo the harm. But it was the first thing in months that felt not like a defense, but a hand reaching out, not grabbing, not controlling, just offering. I placed it on the windowsill. Let it stay there all night. The next morning, I made an appointment at the GP, not because I was unwell, because I'd canceled 3 appointments while stuck abroad, and I needed them to know I was alive. The receptionist smiled gently when I gave my name. "Oh," she said, "we wondered. Your daughter said you were off the radar for a bit. She came in last month to request access to your medical file." My fingers froze. "She what?" "We didn't give it to her," the woman added quickly. "She wasn't listed as next of kin, but she seemed surprised by that." "Thank you," I said. When I left, I changed my listed emergency contact to Eloise. Later that day, I signed the official revocation of Chloe's access to anything with my name on it: medical, legal, digital, financial. Not out of vengeance, out of sense. She had already taken so much. She didn't get to hold the door open on her way out. The knock came just after lunch. I wasn't expecting anyone. Eloise had work. The shelter staff usually called first. For a brief second, I thought maybe it was Toby. Maybe he'd come without asking, without pushing, just quietly, as he used to. But it wasn't Toby. It was a young woman, Late 20s. Smart jacket. Nervous hands. Mrs. Cartwright? I nodded. She pulled a small badge from her bag. Emily Foster. I'm from the local council. Adult safeguarding team. I felt my shoulders straighten. Has something happened? Could I come in for a moment? I let her. She sat in the corner chair, pulling a slim folder from her bag. We received an anonymous tip-off a few weeks ago about possible elder abuse, financial and emotional. We flagged it for review, but now that the police are involved, we're obliged to follow through. And the tip came from... She hesitated. We're not required to disclose that. But I'll tell you it wasn't from the usual channels. That narrowed it down. Toby. She went through a list of questions. Calm, methodical, all the things people think are supportive until you realize they're just checking boxes to confirm you haven't gone mad. I answered each one. I described how I'd lost access to my bank accounts, how my passport had disappeared while abroad, how the home I'd lived in for half a century had been transferred through a document I hadn't fully understood and hadn't been advised on. She took notes, and then she said something I hadn't expected. There's a history, she said softly. A history? With your daughter. This isn't the first time she's acted as a proxy in someone else's affairs. My pulse slowed. What do you mean? She was reported once before, by a neighbor of her in-laws, years ago. Similar pattern, over-involvement, managing without consent. But it didn't go to court. The family didn't want to cause trouble. I sat very still. She's clever, I said. She's practiced, Emily replied. The officer stood to leave but paused at the door. I've seen a lot of cases, many worse on paper, but few that felt as deliberate as this. I nodded once. Thank you for telling me. After she left, I sat in silence. Not because I was shocked, I wasn't, but because I'd been right. All this time, I'd told myself maybe it was a mistake, a lapse, a moment of greed or panic. But it wasn't. Chloe had trained for this, layered it, rehearsed it. I went to my folder, took out every note she'd written me, every bank printout, every court form. And then I added one new page, handwritten, like hers had been. You knew what you were doing. You didn't trip. You chose. You didn't forget me. You erased me. And now I remember every detail you hoped I'd let fade. Later that evening, Eloise arrived. She brought Thai takeaway and a folder of her own. They've missed the court response window, she said. Their defense is still unfiled. Judge has been notified. If it stands, we'll file for summary judgment. So they don't even get to speak? They had their chance, she said. I nodded. We ate quietly. Spring rolls, noodles, tea with too much sugar. Then Eloise pulled out one last sheet. A friend of mine at a local housing trust mentioned an open flat, ground floor, quiet, a small garden, affordable rent, and your name's at the top of the list. I blinked. I didn't want to say anything until we were further along, but it's available in 6 weeks. Where? Off Thornley Road. You know it? I did. Gerald and I used to walk there on Sundays. Small brick homes. Close to the shops, but quiet after dusk. I'll take it, I said. Even if the house comes back? Especially if. She smiled. That night, I packed the notebook. I packed my few things. I wrote one line in the margin of a flyer by the bed. She didn't steal my life. She just reminded me it's mine. The letter from the court came folded twice. No embellishment. No drama. Summary judgment granted. Transfer of property reversed. Title restored to Maeve Cartwright. Costs awarded. I sat in the library when I read it. Not intentionally, just where I happened to be when the envelope caught my eye. The place smelled of old paper and plastic chairs, and I remember thinking, this is where it ends. Not in a courtroom, not in a scene, just a sentence, typed in neutral font, delivered on a weekday. I folded the paper and placed it inside my notebook. Then I took a slow breath and went for a walk. No one called to celebrate. No flowers arrived. That was fine. This wasn't a victory you throw parties for. This was a correction, a balancing of something that should never have been knocked off center in the first place. I walked to Celandine Road, not because I wanted to, because I needed to see it one last time before deciding. The house was still, empty, its curtains closed like eyelids that no longer trusted the light. There was a yellow notice in the window. Private property. Do not enter. Owner access only. I didn't have keys, but I didn't try to go in. Instead, I stood across the street and watched it the way you might look at a photograph of someone you once loved and no longer knew. The roses were overgrown again. The side gate hung slightly off its hinge. The front step had a crack I didn't remember. Chloe must not have noticed, or didn't care. Either way, it wasn't mine to worry about anymore. It was my name on the title again, but that was all. Back at the housing trust, Eloise came by with a small gift. Keys wrapped in tissue paper. "Thornley Road's ready for you," she said. I took them. They were simple. 2 identical silver cuts, one for the door, one for the latch. "I'll come by Saturday," she said. "Help with your things." "I haven't got much," I said. "Even better." We had tea on the steps. Neither of us talked about Chloe. Not anymore. What was left to say? The police hadn't made a decision yet. The file sat with the CPS. Maybe charges would come. Maybe they wouldn't. That part was no longer mine to push. My part was done. But later that evening, I opened the notebook again and wrote, "You returned my name. You returned my roof. But you'll never return the way I used to believe in you." And maybe that's the real theft. The one you didn't think I'd notice. 3 days later, Toby called. He didn't say hello. He said, "I heard. I figured you might. They're furious," he said quietly. "Mum says you've humiliated them." I let the silence sit. "She says you poisoned me against her," he added. "I haven't said a word." "I know," he said. "That's what makes it worse, I think." There was a long pause. "I found your old piano books," he said. "In the attic. She was going to throw them out. Did she?" "No. I took them." Another pause. "Can I visit?" I didn't answer right away. Then I said, "When I've moved." "Okay. And only if you bring the books." He laughed softly. "Deal." We said goodbye. I looked out the window. It was raining again. The kind of soft, persistent rain that doesn't ask permission, just arrives and keeps you company. I didn't cry. I didn't ache. I simply watched it fall and whispered, "Almost there." The flat on Thornley Road wasn't much to look at from the outside. Brick, square, a little tired around the gutters. But inside, it was mine. 2 rooms, low windows, a small patch of garden where mint had started to grow wild. The kitchen had a chipped counter, and the oven light didn't work, but it had a warmth the house on Celandine had lost long before I did. I moved in with a suitcase, a box of folders, a teapot, and a pillow. It was enough. Eloise helped hang the curtains. She brought a second-hand radio and a tin of Earl Grey. We unpacked in silence, the kind of silence that feels like care. When she left, she didn't say, "Call me if you need anything." She just squeezed my shoulder and said, You did it. I slept that night with the window open. No hallway noise. No neighbors arguing through the wall. Just the hum of wind and the rustle of something alive in the garden. I didn't dream. Or if I did, I don't remember. I woke with the sun on my hands and the strangest feeling in my chest. Not joy, not peace, but something simpler. Permission to exist again, without proving, without defending. I made tea, sat on the floor by the window, and read the last letter I'd kept from Gerald. The ink had faded, but the rhythm of his voice hadn't. Don't let them make you small, Maeve. You were never small, even when they tried to make you invisible. Love isn't ownership, it's recognition. Keep your name. That's all I ask. I cried, but only once. Then I put the letter away and got on with the day. Toby came the next afternoon. He arrived exactly when he said he would, which surprised me more than it should have. He was taller than I remembered, a little more hollow around the cheeks, but the eyes were the same. He carried a bag. Inside, piano books, my old recipe folder, and a small wooden frame I hadn't seen in years. A photo of Gerald and me taken by the river when we still looked forward. He handed it to me like it was something fragile. "I thought you should have it," he said. I nodded. "Thank you." We didn't hug. We didn't pretend to be anything we weren't. We just sat at the little table and I made toast and he spread too much jam, and for a while, we talked about nothing that needed defending. Then he said it. "I don't know what happens next." "You don't have to," I said. "She won't speak to me." "She will," I said. "Eventually. Not because she's sorry, because she'll want something. That's how she moves. But you don't have to follow her rules anymore." He looked down at his plate. "I used to think she was doing her best. She was doing her version of best. There's a difference. I don't want to lose her. You don't have to. You just don't have to let her take you with her." He nodded slowly. "You sound like someone who's figured it out." "I haven't," I said. "But I've finally stopped apologizing for what I already knew." Before he left, he stood in the doorway for a long time. Then he asked, "Would it be all right if I came again?" "Not to talk about them. Just to be here." I smiled. "Bring your own tea next time." That night, I moved the photo frame to the windowsill. Not because I needed to look at it, because I wanted it to look out with me. No ghosts, no echoes. Just a man who'd once told me to keep my name, and a flat that smelled of mint and toast and beginnings. The final document came folded in blue paper. No fanfare, no embossed seal, just a line on the header, "Land Registry, confirmation of title." It was mine again. No disputes, no conditions, no daughter's name tucked into a corner of the deed. Just me, Maeve Evelyn Cartwright. I placed the paper in my folder, closed the clip, and tucked it away in the drawer under the kettle. Not for memory, for proof, in case they ever tried to twist the story again. Later that morning, I visited Celandine Road. Not to reclaim it, just to return the key the locksmith had given me after the court judgment. I'd asked him to change the locks and secure the back gate. He'd done it without asking questions. The house looked cleaner now, still unloved, but less hostile. I walked around the side, checked that the utilities had been cut, then dropped the key into a sealed envelope and posted it to Eloise's office. She would handle the listing. I'd asked her to price it honestly, not to bleed the buyers, but not to undersell either. I didn't want revenge through bricks. I just wanted it to be done. Back home, I made soup. Something simple: carrots, lentils, a bit of spice. The flat filled with the smell slowly, like it was learning how to be inhabited. I opened the back door and stepped into the little garden. The mint was still growing wild. I pulled a few sprigs, rubbed the leaves between my fingers, and smiled. That afternoon, Toby came again. No piano books this time. Just bread from the bakery and a newspaper under his arm. "I figured you'd want to see this," he said, tapping the front page. There it was. Family fraud dispute ends. Quietly as retired widow regains property. No names, no photos. Just a few lines about rising cases of intra-family financial abuse and a quote from the safeguarding office reminding people to have the hard conversations before someone else does it for you. I read it once, then again. I folded the paper and placed it by the sink. "Did you want it to be louder?" Toby asked. "No," I said. "Loudness is for people still trying to be believed." "You don't have to try anymore." "No," I agreed. "I don't." We drank tea by the back door. He told me he'd found a part-time job at a record shop. Said it wasn't much, but it felt real. He was living with 2 friends, sharing rent, paying bills on time. Trying to build something separate. "She keeps texting," he admitted quietly. "Mom. Wants to know why I'm taking your side." I looked at him, then said carefully, "There are no sides when one person has all the facts." "I haven't answered yet." "You don't have to," I said. "Let her wonder what silence means for a while." He stayed until the light began to change. Before he left, he turned in the doorway. "Thank you," he said. "For what?" "For not using me to get back at her." I nodded. "You were never hers to use, and I'm too tired for games." After he left, I sat on the step, arms around my knees, and watched the sun slip past the fence. The quiet didn't scare me anymore. I wasn't waiting for the other shoe, or the letter, or the apology. That part of the story was closed. Not sewn shut, just finished properly, like a book you can finally return to the shelf. And I thought, this is it. This is what reclaiming your life looks like. Not with noise, with stillness. It didn't happen all at once. No dramatic sunrise, no sudden swell of peace. Just a quiet stretch of days where nothing bad happened. And that, after everything, felt miraculous. I started doing small things again. Went to the market. Bought fruit without calculating if I could afford it. Borrowed books from the library that had nothing to do with law or grief. Wrote my name, my full name, on a label and stuck it to the inside of my front door. Not in case I forgot, but in case anyone else ever tried to. One morning, I woke up and realized I hadn't thought of Chloe in 2 days. Not with hate, not even with hurt. Just hadn't thought of her. That was the victory. Not the papers. Not the title. Freedom from the habit of being betrayed. A few weeks later, the house sold. Quiet transaction, fair price. Eloise handled everything. The proceeds came into the account I'd set up in my name alone. No conditions, no watchers, no permissions needed. I used some of it to fix the fence behind my flat. Some to donate to the charity trust that had taken me in without questions. The rest, I put away. Not because I was afraid of losing it again, but because I liked the feeling of knowing it was there. Mine. Not a reward. Not compensation. Just mine. I rewrote my will. Left the bulk of it not to Chloe, but to the housing trust and to Toby. Not because he had come back, but because when he did, he came empty-handed. No excuses, no demands. That's what made the difference. He visits now. Not often. Just enough. We don't talk about her. Sometimes he plays music through his phone while I cook. Sometimes we sit in the garden and name the plants we can't identify. We don't need to say anything meaningful. The fact that we're both here, intact, says enough. The mint in the garden has taken over a corner now. I let it. Let it climb the edges and reach for the light, like it knows it belongs. Some afternoons I write. Not stories, not memoirs, just fragments. Sentences that sound like truth. Love shouldn't need a witness to feel real. Silence is not always peace. Sometimes it's surrender. You don't owe people your ruin just because they call it family. Some things break quietly. Some things rebuild quieter still. And this one, which I wrote in the margin of the last notebook page, I am not what they did. I am what I reclaimed. I'm not angry anymore. Anger is a young woman's fire. Mine burned long enough. What's left now is steadier, the warmth you get from something that held through the storm. One day, maybe Chloe will call. She'll say she's changed. She'll want to talk. Not because she wants reconciliation, but because she'll want access. That's her language. I won't be cruel, but I won't be naive. You don't leave the door open just because someone knocks. You check the lock, listen through the wood, and if the voice sounds like it did before, you walk away. That's not bitterness. That's what survival looks like when you're 78 and no longer interested in being manageable. So yes, this is how it ends. Not with revenge, with return. To myself, to my name, to my life. If you've read this far, thank you. And if any part of this felt familiar, if you've ever been made to doubt your memory, your value, your right to say no, then hear me now. You're not imagining it. You're not being difficult. You're not overreacting. And you are not too old to take your name back. Keep it. Speak it. Protect it. And if they try to take it again, don't whisper.